Alright, so we're going to talk tonight about photographing footwear and tire track impressions. And before I teach you how to photograph footwear and tire track impressions, I want to first begin by impressing on your mind the value of footwear and tire track impressions. A typical homicide scene, if you were to estimate what percentage of homicide crime scenes, ones that are in fact actually investigated, where a crime scene unit shows up and processes the scene, what percentage of homicide crime scenes do you think that fingerprints are developed and sent for the crime, to the crime lab for some sort of analysis? What do you think? What do you think the percentage is? 5? Do you think it's only 5?
65.
65?
Probably closer to 90.
Yeah, it's fairly high. Now, I do not have an exact number.
We're all right.
So, yes, you're all right. No. So this is anecdotal, meaning this is from my experience being involved in homicide investigations. I would say the majority of homicide scenes have at least one fingerprint submitted. They're going to find at least one fingerprint. It doesn't mean it's going to match anything, but they're going to search for them, and they will find fingerprints. Now, why do you think that is? Why is it that fingerprints are submitted in almost every crime scene?
Because people are grimy and they touch
Yeah,
it.
because they're, for one thing, we know that they can be found if you use the right techniques.
It's really easy to find a fingerprint anywhere.
Yeah, they're not super difficult to find.
Not only that, but then I know, like, I was watching. But I know from the fingerprint class that we also have this similar on our feet. And even if people wear gloves, sometimes they forget and they don't know and they don't wear shoes.
Yep.
So you have footprints.
And we certainly know that any area that has friction-rich skin, be it on our hands or our fingers or on the bottom of our feet, that those ridge details are unique, right? We know for sure that no two people have the exact same fingerprint. So it's possible for us to say for sure that that fingerprint belongs to that person and no other person, correct? All right. I want to do a little interesting exercise with you. I'm going to list for you guys 5 different types of evidence that you might find in a crime scene. And I'm first of all listing them in no particular order. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell me, once I've listed them, we're going to go through them, and I want you to tell me which one you think is the most valuable forensically. Does that make sense? So let's say at a crime scene, let's say you do find a fingerprint. All right, so we think we have a fingerprint belonging to the suspect. That's probably pretty valuable. All right, so we found a fingerprint. That's good. Let's say during the process of looking at the crime scene, we find some blood, which contains some DNA. So maybe we think that the suspect cut themselves and there's some blood at the scene. So some DNA. Maybe we have a victim, somebody's dead at the scene. And maybe gripped in their hands is some trace evidence, maybe some hairs or fibers. So let's just say trace evidence, hairs, fibers. Maybe they were shot, and so maybe during autopsy they pull a bullet out of the body. All right, so we have a fired bullet. And then, of course, maybe outside of the home, maybe we can see where the perpetrator entered the home. Maybe they busted through a window, and in the mud outside the home, we can see that there are these shoe prints, all right, or these shoe impressions. So here we have 5 different types of evidence. And it's important to understand that not all evidence has the same evidentiary value, right? Of these 5, which one do you think is the most valuable? All right, raise your hand if you think it's the DNA. Raise your hand if you think DNA is the most valuable. Okay? You're wrong. It is not. Okay? By and far, the most valuable of these 5 pieces of evidence is the fingerprint. The fingerprint is the most valuable because no 2 people in the entire world have the same fingerprints. So I can say for sure, I can definitively say that that fingerprint belongs to the left thumb of John Smith, to the elimination of the other 70 billion fingerprints on the planet. Can we do that with DNA? No, not with our current methods of analyzing DNA. We can speak in terms of probabilities. We can say it's probably this guy with a very high level of probability, but we can't use the term identification. You will never hear a DNA analyst say, we identified this DNA as coming from that guy. They'll say it has the same profile. And the likelihood of it coming from somebody else is astronomically low, but we can't say for sure it's a match. All right, so fingerprints, the number 1. What do you think is number 2 on the list? Raise your hand if you think it's DNA this time. Thank you for keeping your hand down because it's still not DNA. All right, trace evidence, unfortunately, no.
It's the
Bullet.
bullet.
Nope, shoe impression. How many are surprised that it's the shoe impression? If we find a shoe impression in the mud or a shoe print, maybe someone has some blood on their shoe and they step in the kitchen and leave a shoe print, is it possible for us to say that that shoe print was definitely made by that shoe and no other shoe?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Just like with a fingerprint, we can say for sure, not just that it's a Nike size 9 Air Jordan, we can say that that is Brian's Nike size 9 Air Jordan. Think about your shoe. As you wear it around, you get a unique wear pattern on the bottom of your shoe. You get cuts and gouges in the bottom of your shoe. You get individual markings that make your shoe unique. We can say for sure that those 2 shoe prints, or that shoe print, was definitely made by that shoe. Why is that not quite as valuable as the fingerprint? Because I can't say that you were the one wearing the shoe. I can definitely say that your shoes were at the crime scene. I just can't say if it was you that was wearing those shoes, right? It could have been your evil, twin brother that wore your shoes to the crime scene. I don't know. The third one, by the way, just to speed this up, I'll help you out. It's the bullet. We can definitely say that if we pull a bullet out of the body, we can definitely say that bullet was fired by that exact gun. So we can make what we call those identification statements. It's only now, in that 4th position, that DNA shows up. Raise your hand if you were surprised that DNA was that low. You should raise your hand because more than half of you guys thought DNA was the number 1.
Yeah.
Trace evidence, unfortunately, that's number 5. That's the least valuable of all of them. Now, why do we go through this little exercise? It's to emphasize to you guys the importance of shoe prints. Remember I asked you the question before about what percentage of crime scenes do you think fingerprints are submitted to the lab? I would say that the number is well over 80%. Why is that? Because everybody knows how valuable fingerprints are. What percentage of homicide scenes do you think shoe prints are submitted to the crime lab? It's probably less than 20%. Now why? Looking at the list though, of the most valuable shoe prints is where? Second. So why is it that, and by the way, DNA, we get that submitted to us all the time. So why would we not get shoe prints submitted to us? Is it because they're not there?
No.
No, they're there.
But
They
it's
don't
surface
think
of
they're
their
valuable enough?
potential.
Okay, I think in a lot of cases it's a lack of training. Those who are processing the scenes, 1, may not know how valuable they are, and so don't realize, hey, we should be looking for these. 2, again training, may not know how to find them. This floor right here, looking down at it, you might think, I don't see any shoe prints. Well, yeah, there's no bloody shoe prints on the floor, but they are there if you know how to look for them. Just like fingerprints. Are there fingerprints on this dry erase board?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you just can't see them. They are what we call latent. You have to develop them. And so I think a lot of the times it's a training issue. People don't realize how valuable they are, or they don't know how to find them or collect them. The whole reason we're doing this discussion, specifically on footwear and tire tracks, is because they really truly are that valuable. The largest mass murder in Arizona's history happened in the early 1990s. I think we talked about it earlier this semester. It was called the Buddhist Temple Murders. There were 9 people murdered at a Buddhist temple in the west side of Phoenix around 1991. They were shot and killed by 2 high school students from Agua Fria High School. So there's 2 high school students, Jonathan Duty, and his friend, I forget his first name, Garcia was his last name. They were both members of the junior ROTC program at their high school. And for whatever reason, they got in their own minds that they were going to try to do some sort of covert military operation, and they decided to try to break into this Buddhist monastery in the middle of the night. And when they did that, they took hostage 9 people in the monastery. Now, they were wearing masks and things to try to conceal their identity. However, Jonathan Duty's mom was associated with that Buddhist temple. And he thought that one of the monks recognized him. Because the people that were murdered, by the way, 6 Buddhist monks, an 80-year-old Buddhist nun, a teenage kid who was a monk in training, and then just a volunteer, a cook that was there making food for the monks. They murdered these 9 people, and one of the reasons is because Jonathan Duty thought that one of the monks recognized him, so they panicked and they shot and killed these 9 people. Well, what they did next is they tried to conceal the crime, not conceal it, but make it look like it was something other than what it was. They tried to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. So they stole some things from the monastery. And one of the things they did, which was odd, is they took a fire extinguisher off of the wall and they sprayed it all over on the inside of the temple. And then as they were walking around, remember they were junior ROTC, so they were dressed in military fatigues, they were wearing military boots. Well, as they're walking around, the dust from the fire extinguisher settled on the ground, and then as they're walking around, they're leaving behind these boot prints. Well, later on, when the police finally discovered that it was Jonathan Duty and Garcia who had committed this crime, they confessed to the crime. And they were convicted, and they spent the last 30 years in jail. About 2 years ago, Jonathan Duty, in appeal, won a new trial. And he claimed that his confession was coerced. And so the judge in the case actually threw the confession out because they agreed that his confession was coerced. So now the confession could no longer be used in court. So now to convict Jonathan Duty of this crime, the only thing they had left to use was physical evidence. In particular, the main piece of evidence they used was the shoe prints. Largest mass murder in Arizona's history. It was shoe prints that was used to get that conviction.